Hello?
All right, so it says here I'm connected via audio via the phone. So let's do a quick check. Can everybody hear me now? If you can, just let me know via the chat window. Okay. All right, sounds good. I'm going to leave my cell phone on speakerphone so that you guys can hear me as I'm using both hands. Okay, so what I'll do in regards to the PowerPoint presentation is I will run through what are the top 15 commands, and then we'll go into the software to explain what are those commands, how do they function, how do they work, where are they located, and maybe some tips and tricks on how to use them. And maybe you might find that some of them you already know and some of them you didn't know you can do certain things. Okay, so here we go. So the first command is the delete command. And the delete command, you can actually use it several ways. Excuse me. Via the delete icon, via your keyboard, via holding the delete key down on your keyboard and the left click. Command number 2 is the move command, and we'll look at it from the modify panel before and after selecting objects via press and drag, via the options toolbar, and via control with leaders and schedulers. Command number 3 is the select command, and you're like, wait, what do you mean the select command? This is really, when they say the select command, they mean how do we select objects within Revit. So left-clicking to select, window selection method, control and shift options, and then even managing selection steps. Command number 4, undo. So that's probably one of my favorite commands because I mess up a lot and I like to undo things. And so we'll get into that command and different ways to do the undo command, such as Control-Z, via the icon, via sketch mode, via the list. Command number 5 we'll get into is the option. Oh, hold on a second. I've got a hiccup on my PowerPoint. I said the number 5. The number 5 is the copy command, and it's basically looking at the copy command via the modify panel, the Control-C for copying to the clipboard, before and after selections, the options toolbar choices, and even control and left click and drag. Command number 6 is the dimensioning command, and we'll cover actually all the different dimensions and temper dimensions and even global parameter dimensions as well. We'll cover the command number 7, finishing the sketch, and this is basically the green arrow check mark that you use when you're in sketch mode and how it's being used and where it's being used. We have the align command. Let's jump to the PowerPoint. For some reason it's hiccuping. So for the align command, we'll look at the align command within the modify panel. We'll look at the multiple align feature, before and after selecting objects, locking, and aligning in 3D, and even in patterns. the command number 9, the default 3D view command, and how to basically start it up, what happens when that occurs, where is it located, how to change the naming convention of it and why we changed the name convention of it, and even using the selection box command with the 3D view command. Command number 10, trim and extend, which everybody uses quite a bit too. So we'll look at trimming, extending single and multiple objects. We'll also look at trim to corner because I kind of think that's part of it. And then how to switch from trim to extend or back to trim, vice versa, while in the command. Command number 11 that's used most is the save command, and that's good because we need to save our work. So you'll learn how to save different ways within the Quick Access toolbar, Control-S saving to central, the backups, and the Save As features. Command number 12 is the zoom command. And basically, how do we use a zoom command? And within the navigation toolbar, the keyboard shortcuts, the scroll wheel, and even on the steering wheel and the double clicking. Command number 13 that's mostly used is the opening command, how to open up a file. And we'll look at just the standard command within the recent files window, Control-O, the Windows keyboard shortcut method, the Quick Access toolbar method, dragging and dropping files, and opening multiple file formats. And the 14th command that's used most is the Properties palette. And you would think that it's not a command, but it really is a command because you're inside either the Instance Property palette or you're in the Type Properties palette. And when you make changes, that's actually initializing commands within there. And then the last of the top 15 used commands is the exit command and knowing how to get out of Revit. And we'll go ahead and jump into the Revit software so we can take a look at those commands. I'm going to minimize some windows for a second. And jump into Revit. So here I have a Revit model. I'm actually using Revit 2018. And most, if not all of these commands that I cover are going to be in all of the Revit formats. You know, as low as 2014. It's been a while since I've jumped to an older version of Revit. So, but for the most part, they should function all together. So the first command that we talked about is the delete key, is the delete command. How do we delete content? Very easily, head over to the Modify tab, Modify panel, and hit this delete command. Start the command, pick an entity, hit Enter, or spacebar, and the object is deleted. That's one method. Second method to delete is to just hit the delete key on your keyboard. When you do, you get an X next to your icon, your cursor. And you then select the entity that you want, you hit Enter or spacebar, and it is also deleted. And then here is a neat trick is that if you hold the delete key on your keyboard, you have the X on your cursor, and it basically allows you to touch an entity and it deletes automatically like so. So that's a little faster than using the first two methods. The second command, the move command. So how do we use the move command? The move command, like all of the other modification type commands, are located in the Modify tab of the ribbon, Modify panel, and the move command is here. Most people will start the command and then select an entity, hit Enter, and then they'll move it from one location to another. They may use the snaps to pick a point and then move it somewhere else to be another snap point, or they will take the move command, let's pick something else because those are aligned to each other, and they'll just move it. They'll just click wherever they want and they'll move it in the direction that they want, and they'll type in a distance, say 5 for 5 feet, and hit Enter, and it moves in that direction. That's a pretty typical approach for using the move command. Now, you can, however, just select the entity first. So if I select the entity first and then I use the move command, it goes directly into the move command without requesting that I hit Enter or spacebar, and it basically saves another click. And so then I can therefore click and just move where I want, and it's done. And that's another way to move. We do have the old school press and drag. If you go over to the Modify command in the far left corner of your ribbon, under the Select feature, there is Drag Elements on Selection. They used to call this Press and Drag. And what it allows you to do is left-click and hold the entity and move your mouse, and you're dragging it. Therefore, you are moving it. When you do the if this command is not checked, then you cannot left-click and hold and drag. It won't let you do it. You actually have to select the entity first, and then you can press and drag. Okay. When you use the Move command, you have some features within the Options toolbar. You have the Constrain feature, and if this is checked, it forces your move to be in X and Y only. You cannot move it at an angle, no matter how hard you try. Okay, so that's the Constrain. If you use the Move command and you say Disjoint, this allows you to break any relationships that you have. So let's see, I have this chair here that has a locking alignment relationship to this desk. If I use the Move command and I move it this way, both the desk and the chair moves. If I do the Move command again and I say Disjoint, then it will break that alignment and it will break that joining condition. The same feature occurs and functionality occurs, a lot of people they use when they're working with walls. And we draw a wall like this. Oops, let's not use that wall. Let's use standard walls so it's easier to see. Okay, so if we look at this wall here, if I select this object and I move it, by default it moves it where it is joined. And it stretches the other wall and keeps them connected. But if I use the Move command and I check Disjoint, it will break that relationship. Okay, so that's the Disjoint feature. And then lastly, we have the Control Move icon with leaders and schedules. So let's look at a leader. So if I head over here and I start the text command with a leader, and I put in something like this, S. Let's not use my reverse arrow. Let's just use arrow there so you can see. When you select that annotation, there is this little Move Control Drag that you can click and hold and drag, and it moves the text and the leader, but not the leader arrowhead point. If you put your mouse over the leader line and left-click and hold, you are pressing and dragging. If you use the Move command, you're moving the whole entity. So that little control feature here occurs on the leaders, and it also occurs on schedules. So if you have a view that has schedules, for example here, and this is a big schedule, if I select it, I can break that schedule by clicking the elbow symbol, and then each one has a little control drag hand over here. So you may have to zoom in a little bit to get to it. Left click and hold and you can pull it. And therefore it is actually doing the press and drag move feature. That's kind of like the Move command too, and they use that quite a bit. And obviously we can put it back. The third command is the Select command. So basically the question is, how do you select content? You can obviously left click and it gets selected. You could do a window crossing, right to left. What that means is that if the crossing window is from right to left, your box that you're creating is a dash box, which means anything that it touches, it gets selected, as you can see here. If you do the window crossing from left to right, the box is a solid box, which means the entities have to be fully contained in order to be selected. Very similar to AutoCAD. However, AutoCAD also colors the boxes different colors, which is a plus because it's easy to see. And AutoCAD has a lassoing selection feature where Revit does not. If you do grab a whole bunch of stuff like this and you realize you need to remove objects from this selection, you can hold the Shift key down and you get a little negative symbol next to your cursor. So anything that you touch gets removed from your selection set. And then conversely, if you hold the Control key down, you get a plus symbol next to your cursor. So anything that you pick after the fact gets added to your selection set. Now there is an interesting feature in the software called selection sets, and I'm going to kind of use this as an example. If you head over to the Manage tab of the ribbon, under Selection Panel, you can click Edit, Load, or Save. And the way this functions is if I select entities by default, that selection panel will come up in the contextual tab. And I can click Save to save those objects as part of a group, if you will. It's not really a group in Revit, but it's a grouping and selection set. So I'm going to call it partial walls and hit OK. Now that it's created, if I want to use those again, if I head back to the Manage tab of the ribbon and click and under Select, you now have the load capability. So if I click Load and I pick the partial walls and I hit OK, then those objects automatically get added to my current selection set so I can do things like move it. Okay? If you have other entities that you wish to select as part of that selection set, what you can do is you can head back over and click Load, select the one you want, it gets added to your selection set, and then let's do it another way. If I grab these and I click Load and I pick Partial Wall and I click OK, they get added. I can add these as well with the control, and then I can move what I want. Lastly, if I click Edit and I select the partial walls and click Edit, it goes into this editing mode, and it shows me what I can and cannot add, and I can add multiple as well. So I'm going to say Add to Selection Set, this one, and I'll use multiple and pick these as well, and hit Finish. And now it's been redefined, so if I click Finish Selection, that partial walls is now created as a selection set. If I click Load and I hit Partial Walls and hit OK, it should highlight the ones that I added. It's kind of interesting. Question, is that selection set always there or in random access memory? If you are doing Control-C, that's copying to Windows clipboard. That's temporary memory, and that's a temporary state, and it will go away if you're using Control-C, for grabbing something else. But this selection set here is part of the Revit software. So once you've created it, it will always be in that, within that project file. It's a good question. Okay. Command number 4, undo. I love undo because I mess up a lot. So I can just do Control-Z, and it goes back to previous. Okay. I could also use this arrow key and click, and each time I click, it undoes each step of the way. I can also use the little black arrow to the right of that, and it gives you a running history of all the commands that you've done. So the more that I highlight, the more the software will go backward. And conversely, you have the redo command. So each time you click the arrow, it goes forward in time one step. And the more you highlight, the more it jumps forward in time. So that undo command can be done via Control-Z. It can be done via the undo icon and the drop-down list. And then another way that people use it is, let's say you have a floor that you want to create, and you're in sketch mode, and you're drawing the floor lines like this, not a big deal. And then you realize, oh, that last line that I drew is not really what I want. If I do Control-Z to initiate the stop of the next segment, and then do Control-Z again, it will keep reducing and removing the previous line work. So that's really kind of like an undo within the sketch mode. And then you can finish your command and make the floor that you need, or whatever system family that you need when you're in sketch mode. So the Control-Z during sketch mode works really well for any of the system families that are sketch mode based. So floors, roofs, ceilings, railings, and stairs. Okay. Let's take a look at command number 5, the copy command. The copy command is very similar to the move command. So head over to the Modify tab of the ribbon. I start with the copy command. I pick the entity. I'm finished picking objects, so I hit Enter or Spacebar, or even right-click and finish selection. And then when you go to copy, you're asked to specify a start point and then an alternate point. So I can, again, pick a node and then put it wherever I want, and it creates a copy. Done. I could do the copy command where I select the entity first and then hit the command, and it saves me a click or a spacebar or an enter, however you look at it. And you can also, again, use constrain and multiple. So if I have constrain turned on, it forces that copy to be X and Y. If I do copy, I can do multiple. And it stays in the multiple copy command until I am finished. And when I'm finished, I hit enter or spacebar, and all of your entities are created. Okay. And let's see. You also can actually left-click and hold the control key down and move your mouse, and you're basically dragging a copy selection. So again, the way that works is you hold the control key down, left-click and hold your left mouse button on an entity, and then drag that entity, and it creates another copy. Now, if you do that feature, if you hold the shift key down, it forces it to have an alignment, vertical or horizontal. And if an entity is at an angle, like maybe a wall, I don't have a wall here that's at an angle, but if you have a wall that's at an angle and you do the control drag with the shift key, it will copy it parallel to the angled object. And let's head over to the next command. Command number 6, the dimensioning command. So we all know dimensioning is very, very key in the software. So I'm actually going to start with a new file for dimensioning. Makes life easier. And there's a lot of things we can do with dimensioning. First off the bat is we have temporary dimensions that pop up. This is just like dynamic input in AutoCAD. So as you drag and move your mouse, you'll see heads-up display data of the dimensioning of the entity. So if I type in 25 and I hit enter, it gives me an object that's 25 feet in length. Okay? Or I can just move my mouse in the direction that I want to go and just click, and it starts to build that object. Okay? If you select an entity, the temporary dimensions that pop up give you a lot of control, and you can go ahead and click any blue text of the temporary dimension, make a change, and the object will adjust. If you select an entity, you can left-click these move witness line dots, and it will adjust what it's actually dimensioning, face-to-face, center, or other side of face. And again, you can change the dimension and adjust. If I take this wall and switch it to a different type of wall and switch this to a fine level of detail, shade it up so you can see, if I select this wall, that dot, if I click it, it jumps to one side, click it again, jumps to the other side, click it again, jumps back to the other side. If I wanted to align and dimension to the inside face of that brick, I can left-click and hold, put my cursor on that point, tab, and it will highlight that line, let go, and it will dimension to that part of the entity. Okay, so that's temporary dimension. Oh, by the way, you can also click this little icon right here, and it makes the temporary dimension permanent on this view. And if you select the entity, the text will still go blue, and I can still adjust the design accordingly. Now let's look at it from the standpoint of dimensioning in general. So let me draw some stuff real quick. And zoom in here, and I'll put in a couple doors, and I'll put in some grid lines. And then also, I'll throw this over here, and I'll throw this over here, and I'll throw this over here. Okay, let's look at dimensioning. Annotate tab of the ribbon, align command. Start with the command using individual references that allows you to pick one entity that has location, another location, click to place it, and you're done. If I say click the edge, click that wall, click this wall, click this wall, click this edge, place it, I have a running string. If I click this equal symbol, it will shift the entities to hold that equality condition. And then I can select that and switch it to say value. Or I can switch it to say equality formula, where I can actually give it a formula. For example, total length is equal to the length of the segment times the number of segments. And I get that result. If I delete this, it will give me a warning to let me know that the constraint is there. If I click OK, the annotation disappears, but the constraint holds. If I click unconstrained, the condition goes away. Now, if I use the align command, I can actually switch to, say, entire walls and just pick this wall. Or I can go into the options and do any one of these and place check marks in any one of these or groupings of these. So I can go to the intersecting grid lines. I can say intersecting walls. I can do openings or any combination of check marks, and also the width. Okay? And then you have the linear command that allows you to pick 2 points of the entity, and it forces the dimension to be horizontal or vertical, as so. And then you have the angular command, which is pretty self-explanatory. You pick 2 entities and you place the dimension. Radial, you select the object, click to place the radius. Diameter, again, select the entity, click to place that dimension. Arc length, start the command, pick the arc, then pick the ends of the arc, and then place it, and you're in. Okay. You have spot elevation, spot coordinate, and spot slope. This works off of looking at the actual 3D object to see if it has slope. So let me throw in a floor really quick and put in a slope arrow and take that arrow and give it slope and finish it. Okay, so back over here, if I click spot elevation, I can specify with a leader, shoulder, and specify actual top, bottom, or both, and click and place it, or spot coordinate as well, or spot slope. Okay, so lots of different ways for dimensioning. These are all the features. Oh, and by the way, if you have, if you need to adjust the dimension, say something as simple as selecting this entity, I can click Edit Witness Line, pick another object, and click in space, and it gets added. Or I can right-click a witness and say Delete, and it removes that. Okay, and there's a whole bunch more. Obviously, we can double-click and get into the dimension text window to replace it with something other than another dimension. And also prefixes above and below and data below, okay? And that's dimensioning. Oh, and let's look at, I forgot, global parameters. So let's do this real fast. Okay, I'll throw in a dimension. Oh, by the way, DI is a keyboard shortcut for dimensioning. And you can actually click the tab key to force it to look at another entity when it's dimensioning, like so. And so we have a design situation where the client says, I want all the doors to be 8 inches off the corner if they're next to a junction like this. How do we make that apply? We can head over to the Manage tab of the ribbon and go to Global Parameters. And we can either add it right here, or we can add it on the fly when we're selecting an entity like this dimension. So I'll go in here and I'll click Create Parameter and call it Door Inspect. Once I've done that, that global parameter is created, it's recorded, it shows up here, and now I can force it to be 8 inches. And it forces the object to move. And so if I select both of these and force them to be door inspect, they all hold. Okay? So that's just a taste of what global parameters are and global parameters with dimensions. Take a look at Finish Sketch. That's the green check mark when you're creating objects, system families when you're in sketch mode. And they use it quite a bit. So if you're in the floor command, you've already seen me using it. It's right here. If you use the roof by footprint command, then it goes into that mode, you draw, and again, the green check mark is here. If you're using foundation slabs here, foundation slabs, same thing, goes into sketch mode, and there's that command. If you're using railings, when I go into the railing command, it goes into sketch mode, and there's my green check mark, okay? If you're using stairs, if you're doing stairs by component comes up automatically. You are in sketch mode, and you can switch to sketch-based, but you also still have the triangle here as well. And same thing applies with ramps and then families. So if you're building a family and you're working with the different Boolean operations, such as extrude, blend, sweep, things like that, then you're good. It'll actually show up there as well. So if I go over here to, say, generic model, and I start a new family, if I hit the extrusion command, it goes into sketch mode with a triangle, with a green arrow. Same thing with the blend, okay? Same thing with all these other commands. I can pick any one that I want. It goes into sketch mode, and there's my green arrow. That's used quite a bit, as you can see. Okay. Next command, number 8, is the align command, because we need to know how to align stuff. So let's start a new file, and basic alignment tools function, and I'm in plan view. So you can use align command in plan, in elevation, in section, in 3D. Okay, so I have 3 walls here. I want to take this one and this one and move it up so it's aligned to this one. I can just head over to the Modify tab, Modify Panel Align command. Just like all these other commands here, I can start the command, then pick the object, or pick the object, then start the command. So I'm going to use the Align command, pick this to align to, and then I can either, if I'm just moving a single entity, I just pick that entity, and it moves up, and I can lock that relationship. Or if I, Control Z, if I say the Align command to you, I can use multiple alignment here. And I can also force it to look at a certain part of the wall. So then I can do this and lock. And if I move this wall, only that one moves, because only that one was aligned and locked. This one was not, okay? You can align, like I said, in 3D. So what I'm going to do is this. Let's delete that. Let's head over to the, let's draw 2 walls here. Make this one CMU. Make this one click. And go to fine level of detail and switch to 3D view. Okay. So, and I'll shade it so if you were to see. And let's just say hypothetically that the pattern didn't come out properly. Here it does. It's kind of pretty, Revit's pretty smart about that. But let's just say hypothetically that the patterning of the brick is off. And this line right here needs to be moved up to this line right here, let's just say. What you do is you start the align command, AL is the keyboard shortcut. You'll tab into that horizontal, that line of that pattern. Then tab into, and then sometimes you have to tab in, sometimes you don't. But if you don't, it's good, it's recognizing. I can click this line of this brick pattern, and it moves it up. And then I can lock that relationship if I need to. So you can actually use the align command to align patterning in 3D. Command number 8, the 3D view. Okay, as you can see, how do I create a 3D view by default? All I do is click this little house symbol. And when I do, it creates the view, and it's called bracket, 3D bracket. That's the default name. And if you want to do any kind of annotation of this, put in dimensions, put in liters and text and things like that, you can lock this view. So when I go here and I lock the view, save orientation, it forces me to give it a new name. I cannot use the default bracket, 3D bracket name. So I say lock 3D view. Done. And you'll notice it gets changed over here. So if I need my house, my default 3D view back, I just click the house symbol again, and it comes back, creates a new one. Or I can go to the View tab with a ribbon, Create Panel, and I have my default 3D view command here. Okay. And then lastly, if you're working on a project, let me look at a bigger file or something. This is kind of a neat tool that they introduced, I want to say 2017, maybe 2016 R2 is the earliest they introduced it. But let's say you're looking at this area and saying, well, I really kind of want to look at just certain things in 3D. What you can do is I'm going to uncheck select elements by face. So I can do a window crossing. So I'm going to do a window crossing and just this right here. Now that I have those selected in the View panel, there's this command called Selection Box. Click it. And it automatically opens up the 3D view, automatically turns on the Section Box command, and moves the section box so that it only encompasses that rectangular area that I told it to look at and those objects that I have selected. I can then take that section box and I can right-click and hide it. so I can really start to look at it this way. It's a pretty neat tool, especially if you're just trying to check something and kind of analyze something. Worst case, you can just uncheck the section box over here, and the section box turns off in the default 3D view. Wow, timing is quick. Okay, trim and extend. So let's look at trim and extend real fast, and also trim to corner. I'm going to draw some walls. And like that. Okay. So modify tab with the ribbon, modify panel, trim the corner, trim extend single, trim extend multiple. Trim the corner is pretty self-explanatory. You start the command, you pick the sides you want to keep, and you're done. Okay. Trim extend single, start the command, pick the object you wish to use as the cutting edge, and then pick the entity you want to keep and pick the side you want to keep like this, and it trims back. If you hold the control, if you do the command again, and before you pick the first object, if you hold the control key down, you can basically do trim multiple. And then if you do trim extend multiple, you're picking an entity to extend to, and then you pick the entity, and you'll see that it does that. Now, when you're picking, you can do individual picking like that, or I'm undoing. You can do the trim extend and do a window crossing like this, and the trim extends all of them. Okay. I'm also being cognizant of time. Command number 11, save command. We got to save our work, right? So we hit the save command, boom, you're done. You have an icon next to it called synchronize and modify settings. This is save to central. So if you're dealing with a Revit model with work sets, then this command becomes active, and you can save it to that particular central model and the work set to that model. You can also do Control S, and it saves the file as well. And if it's the first time you're saving, the Save As window pops up, and it asks you where to put it and what do you want to call it. But also, under the options of the Save As, you have maximum backups, and you can specify whatever number you want. The default a while back was 20, and I think they've dropped it down. I can't remember, but the number of backups that you see here is what that does is it allows you to create multiple backup files for that many. So I'm going to click Save, and mine is set to 3. So if I open up my Windows Explorer and go to C and go to Temp, you're going to see that test RVT, okay? And if I go back to Revit and I hit save again, save again, save again, and I go back, you're going to see test saving backup file 1, 2, and 3. If I hit save again, I am overriding number 1 and calling it 4. And I can, as the many times as I hit save, is going to tell the software overwrite these, and so it'll always have the most current backups, up to 3, in my case 3. For you guys, whatever the number is, that's what you put in. Okay. Command number 12, the zoom command. So there are a lot of things you can do with the zooming command. Let's go back to that file. And so depending on if you're in a 3D view versus a 2D view, you can zoom certain ways. So for example, if you are in a 2D view, you have the navigation toolbar right here. And I can click inside and say zoom in region, and then left click and hold and drag, and it's kind of like zoom window for AutoCAD. Okay, you can do zoom out. You can do zoom to fit, and that's kind of like zoom extend in AutoCAD. If you have multiple views open, and I tile it, WT is the keyboard shortcut, by the way, for tiling. I had to go and open up 3D views set for realistic. By the way, any views that you work with, if the visual style is set to realistic, it takes a while to process. Okay. So as you can see, I have a whole bunch of views here open, and if I want to, I can just type in ZA, which is the keyboard shortcut for zoom all to fit. And they all basically do a zoom extend. Okay. That's a quick, fast, easy way to do it. And then you also have zoom sheet size. And the way what this is doing is that it's changing the zoom So that it looks at the scale, and it sets it up so that the printed text height is what it's supposed to be. And it's kind of weird to explain it that way, but that's what it does. And then you obviously have zoom or a previous pan and zoom. And that's in the 2D view. The navigation toolbar gives you that, but it also gives you, by the way, the steering wheel, which you can also zoom here as well. And then you can use your scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and out wherever your cursor sits. So when you scroll the wheel away from you, the object gets closer to wherever your cursor is and vice versa. If you're in a 3D view, then you still have the navigation toolbar as well. You can still do that as well. And then if you press and hold the mouse wheel down, you can pan. Okay? And almost done, almost done. Let's see, we've got command number 13, open command, because we don't know how to open files. And that's simple, Control-O, okay? And I can open a file. Or I say, oh, by the way, if you're running Revit 2017 or older, you have to hit the big blue R, the application menu. If you're in 2018, you have to hit File, and then you can hit Open. And then you can open a project, a family, a Revit file, so on and so forth, lots of different choices. You can click Open right here as well to open the file. And if you're in the Recent Files window, you can click Open here as well, and Open here as well. And then another neat trick you can do is you can open up Windows Explorer, go to wherever you need to go to that has the files, say, for example, 2018. You can pick whatever you want, or Control-click to pick more than one, or Shift-click to pick more than one, and drag and drop. And if you do this, all those files will open up in Revit. So it's a fast way to open up multiple files. And let's see, double check the chat window if there's any questions. Okay, good, no questions. So we have two more questions left. Oh, by the way, to close a file, if I click close, it closes that one file, right? Let's see. Oh, wait, let's do this. Let's let me continue with the second to last command, properties. The properties palette is a command. It's kind of weird to think of it about it that way, but it is a command because you're basically telling the software when you select an entity and you have these properties, when you go in here and you make changes, say like that, and I hit apply or I move my cursor away from the properties palette, it's initializing the command and forcing the object to make an adjustment. So the instance property window is a command, and also the type properties window as well. So anything that you do in here will actually be a command that's initiated on that type of object, and it applies to all the other objects. And then the last command of the top 15 used commands is the exit command. So I can hit this X right here. Now, in 2017 and older, this X is red. And I can't remember if it's red all the time or if it's red when you put your mouse over it. But I do remember that it's red, whereas in 2018, it's not colored like that anymore. And if I click this, it'll ask me to save any changes to any of the files, okay? And you have to hit save or not save, and then the software will exit. You have in the quick access toolbar, which for me is a file now. I still have to get used to it. And I can click close or I can hit exit Revit. If I hit close, this is just closing the files. Or I can hit this X and close the files. Okay. There is, in AutoCAD, you can say close all files except for the one that you currently have. Whereas in Revit, there is no close all. It's just close. Okay. But that's closing. That's not exiting the software. Whereas if you hit exit Revit here or here, it closes the software. Okay. And then lastly, a lot of people don't realize this, but when you're in Revit and you work with a keyboard shortcut, you can define any keyboard shortcut you want for any command that you want, provided that it's not already being used. So for example, say exit. Exit Revit. There is a command, keyboard shortcut, Alt F4. So I can go in here and say Alt F4. And if the file doesn't need to be saved, it automatically shuts Revit down. So it's a quick way to get out. Let me open up Revit again. And, oh, I have a question, I see. Do they still frown on opening from File Manager or Original instead of from inside Revit? So the question is, Is it still preferable to open up the Revit file from within Revit, or is it okay to open the files via Windows Explorer by just double-clicking or drag and drop? When I am teaching Revit and formally teaching Revit to the students to make sure they understand how to use it properly, the best approach is to do it from within the software here, because that way you know what version of Revit you're in, and when you go to open the file and you pick a file, it will automatically tell you that the file has to be upgraded, okay? So if I go to an older file, let's go to 16. I pick this file and I hit open. It automatically pops this up, okay? And the reason this makes a lot of sense is because it gives you that warning. Now, if you use Windows Explorer and you drag and drop, it will give you that warning as well. But it's a little dangerous to do that because most companies have more than one version of Revit installed on their computer. So for example, on my computer, I have Revit 2018 installed, but in virtual, I have 16, 15, and 17. So if I were to drag and drop feature onto the Revit interface, that Revit software has to be up and running anyway, and so I already know what version of Revit I'm throwing it into. If I don't have Revit open, and I go to Windows Explorer, and I just open the file that I want, like this, and I double-click the file, what is going to happen is that Windows operating system is going to say, look at this file extension and go find the Revit.exe file, any Revit.exe file. So it may not default to the latest version. It may be defaulting to an older version. And so you're going to run into hiccups and problems. So you don't really want to do that. So a good rule of thumb is always open the software first, then use the open command to get to the file that you need. Especially if you're in a company where you're using multiple versions of Revit for multiple projects. And everybody's always in a rush, and if you have a hiccup or a problem and you accidentally open up an older version of Revit and didn't see the warning and it just opened and you start doing work, and the minute you hit save, that file is forever in that updated version. Okay, so be careful. Let's see, another question. Sometimes when I insert a specific object or component into my project, they attach to another component and move along with that piece of equipment when I move it. Is this an example of move with nearby objects? Yes. If so, how do I remove that setting? It's not really a setting that you remove by default. It shouldn't be checked. So if I start a new project and I put in a wall like so, and then I put in a piece of furniture like this desk, okay, if I select that desk, the moves with nearby elements is not on by default. So if I use the move command, MV is the keyboard shortcut, it moves it without a problem. I'm going to undo that. If I do the move command on the wall, it doesn't move that desk, okay? However, if the family has moves with nearby elements turned on, then it should move, provided that this object is close enough where it has that relationship. You notice it doesn't have that relationship. It is close here, but it's not close on the face of it, okay? So if I take this and do this, oops, wait a minute. Actually, let's do this. Let's move this out of the way. Create similar, and I'll hit the space bar to align it. Okay. So now that it's aligned to that entity, if I select it, that is not checked. So it should not affect, see? Whereas if I undo that, select the desk, and hit moves with nearby elements, it should be affected now. So I probably would have to say look at the Revit file to see what's causing that hiccup. But by default, the move with nearby elements should not be checked. When creating a new component, how do I use the dimensioning tool to create an object with an editable dimensioning line? When creating a new component, how do I use the dimensioning tool to create an object with an editable dimensioning line? If I understand correctly, you want to create a family and create it such that the dimension is a parametric dimension so that any end user can input any dimension that they want and it flexes and adjusts the object. Is that correct? Yes or no? So I'm going to assume that's what you're asking. So if I go and start a new family and build a generic model, I have these reference planes, okay? So if I create reference planes that dictate the face of the objects on the left and the right, the top, the bottom, and I build my geometry, say in a simple extrusion, I keep them aligned and the faces aligned and locked. And that way it will move based upon the dimension that I create. Now when I create a basic dimension like this, whoops, come on now, and I hit equal, yeah, really constraint. Wait a minute. What happened here? Delete. I want dimension this to this to this. And then dimension this to this. Okay, and then I'll put my extrusion. So I'm going to build a basic object with dimensions, basic family with dimensions in it to see if I can understand the question that you're asking and if that's correct. Okay, so right now this is a basic dimension. It's not parameterized, it's not intelligent, so we will not control the shape of this object if this gets changed. So if I just save this right now, I'll put it under my temp folder, we'll call it test family, and we'll create a new project. Put it under architecture, go, and I'll control tab back to family, load it into the project and place it. Boom, done. If I select it, there are no parameters in here that define anything, okay? However, if I go back to the family and I select that dimension and I parameterize it, call it width, then it becomes intelligent, which means I can go in here and I can make it 3, and it adjusts. And then I can load it into the project and overwrite the one that I have. And now that I've done that, because I made it a type property dimension, it is adjustable and it affects the object. I think that's what you wanted to know with the question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, yes. That was what I was asking.
That was it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. And then another question is, once you save a selection, can you use that selection in other projects, or is that, no, that's only within the project. It's not outside the project. So that's a good question. So you're like, wait a minute, that's no good. I want to work on a project where I grab some stuff and I want to save it so I can use it in another Revit project. That's easy to do. What you do is you build the stuff that you're building like that, and you can grab this and Control-C to copy to the temporary memory. Go open up the other file, Control-V to paste, and it's done. So if I go here and I start a new file, and I say Control-V, I can click and place it wherever I want. Now, if I need to place it dead center of exactly where it was, Control-V and type in O and hit Enter. And it should put it in. Why did it not put it in? Really? Oh, it was in the opening command. Control-V, 0, Enter. Really? I just did it like 30 minutes ago. What happened? Control-V. I know that works. 0. Here's my keyboard. Numbers locked on. Okay, I got to figure out why all of a sudden it's not working, but I literally just did that 30 minutes ago for another person. Okay, let's see. Another question is, we got that. Number 3, got that. Okay. You can also make it. Yeah, you can make it into a group and save the group and load the group. Yep, you can do that as well. Okay, any other questions? This is supposed to run to 3:30. I know I'm a little off. I'm always off on my webinars. They always run longer, but that's okay. If you have to leave, that's fine. I will, like I said, I am recording this so that if anybody needs it, they can shoot an email to me, and I can send a link to you guys tomorrow morning. Let's see. And if there's anything else, y'all can just, shout, and I'm here. We can keep this going if you want to. I don't have anything super pressing after this, so if you guys are available and you want to hang out and ask some more questions, then I can run through some crazy Revit with you guys. So, but for those who do have to leave, thank you very much for watching. I hope it was beneficial, and I hope if you have any requests or any needs for Revit training or any of the Autodesk software training, just let us know. We're here. Okay? And I'm going to hang out for other Q&A questions for anybody. And I'm going to stop the recording at this point just so that for those who need it later, they'll have it.